A lot has happened. And here I am, just find myself sitting here thinking through, which I know I shouldn't do. Or at least there's a part of me in my mind that tells me not to do that. But even still, I can't help but remember we had a horrible fight, and in the aftermath of the fight, the realization rather of Akiro. I still don't think it's registered or sunk in. There's a part of me still questioning what in the world just went on. But in the aftermath of still trying to recover and figure out what was going on with Akiro, what had happened, we did find a door that led into this corridor, but the moment that we opened it, there was an immense flash, and I found myself stumbling back, unsure of what was before me or even behind me, complete disorientation. But it must have been some sort of trigger or something, because no enemy approached us after that, so it gave us some time to regroup. And, on a lighter note, in the midst of regrouping, we discovered Quinn has some unique abilities. Ones that I rather like. He seemed to just create things out of thin air. I'm not sure how, but as long as it's food, I am more than happy to have him continue to do that. Although he didn't quite share it with me, and I believe it was Pim that seemed to get the benefit of it. But I'm sure as I warm up to him, he seems like a nice young chap. We'll have some good talks, and maybe I'll share some crumbly blueberry pie with him. Grape pie. So, from that point on, we then had to figure out what the next step was, and we needed to find the satchel, because the high seat was there somewhere. We just didn't know where. So Tiri immediately took to her skill of shouting and calling out, which I recall from a previous adventure where he everybody drinks. Where she did the same thing. I'm staring right at Zach. So she smashed her hammers together to create this loud sound now that we were outside, and started to, for what it was worth, basically call out to have people help us find this satchel. But after searching, looking around, I even studied the trees myself. I felt there must be something in the tree. Could it be dangling? And with open arms, I could just catch the high seat. But no, nothing of the sort. And then at that moment, Gilbert shows up and tells us that the council, there's about to be a vote. But none of this can happen. Everything has changed. And so we needed to get there. So we flew with as much haste as we could, with how fatigued we all were. And we went down to the council. And this is where, I don't know how, but I somehow was dubbed, or deemed rather, the one to speak to all these people. This very important matter that I feel completely inadequate. I honestly don't even understand it all, but in preparation, Tiri felt I needed some practice. Maybe I did need some practice. But then it felt very threatening when we were about to tell this poor individual that was in front of us, once we got to the council, that the high seat was missing and the vote could not happen. Akiro has now been killed. I wasn't quite sure what to do in the moment. The words seemed to escape me, but then when we finally just went to the council, and that was where I at least was able to, using my flute, to be able to create imagery, to be able to instruct them on what had happened. Which, of course, there was endless amounts of shock, and from there, everything turned to absolute chaos. And of course I had to be hungry in that moment. But I couldn't eat. I suppose there were more serious things at hand. The high seat randomly shows up. Out of nowhere, we were stunned, but then immediately starts screaming at us, saying that we had stolen him, which, alright, granted, we did swipe him from his bed in the middle of the night, but it was out of care, out of concern. I wouldn't quite say love. So, he immediately starts to condemn us, and the crowd begins to turn against us. Things are turning to chaos, and in all of this chaos, and the crowd is pushing in, we cannot seem to make sense of it all. No one will listen to us. Brick became very tense, began throwing his pistol around and pointing with his pistol, which I mean, he's a fine, handsome gentleman, but if you do put that thing in your face, it's not quite that appealing. So where was I? It was just all so much. And then it was in that moment that Ingrid, as we were all attempting, we just determined we had to get away. We had to retreat. And in that moment, Ingrid did see, or at least could have sworn that she saw Dardanos, which is unspeakable. I cannot believe it. But in the midst of all that, we ran, and fled to the Hauseta. Aren't you impressed that I knew that word? From the Hauseta, Quinn has this gigantic sword. I can't remember its name.
Archelon.
What is it?
Archelon.
Archelon. It's the one thing I didn't remember, but I like the way it looks. So it came down and locked and melted the handles together, so at least for the moment we were safe. And then in that moment of trying to rally together and bring up Ybberg's spirits, who was in quite despair, a lightning bolt decided to come straight for me. I don't know what I did to it, but I gave it the nasty eye. And in the chaos, part of my tattoo, the falcon, emerged and protected me from this bolt, and we all fled down to the lower floor of the Hauseta, where all of the research was being done on the whale's fin. And, of course, we collected the whale's fin, determined where we needed to go, and then Ingrid, Aurora, still trying to figure that one all out, but in the midst of her flaw, she started to set things on fire, so we all joined in. What's nothing wrong with a little bit of pyrotechnics? And then began to flee, and just before fleeing, though, Brick did receive communication from Nori that we had to get up there. There was discovery made. We also had to let him know not to believe any of the lies that we were somehow now fugitives and wanted for kidnapping and killing the High Seat, because I completely forgot to mention a strange happening of events where the High Seat seemed to be burned alive out of a random explosion of fire of some sorts. I didn't quite catch it all, but hence what I mean when I say absolute chaos. So we had to get up to Nori. We all flew up there. I glided and took a look at the telescope, which now the copy of Ajax, fine young man, great voice, if he was a man, The copy began to just spark and sputter, but it had discovered something in the constellations above. And even Quinn, having no knowledge of, or any awareness of what this is, he was even to sense that something was off by looking. The color was different, the constellation was moving, things were changing, something was going on. I think it's a little bit larger than what my mind can even grasp. I'm not clear on exactly what's going on, but I know it's not good. And we had to find a ship to go to the Prodi Institute. And I feel very important saying the Prodi Institute. Forgive my humor in the midst of sheer terror and nightmares and chaos. But finally, Pim also had a realization that she said something that was very odd. That Brick was different. And now, I mean, granted, he's different. We're all different in some sorts of way. But it was the way that she said it and the look in her eye when she looked at him and could sense something was off. Something was just not from here. And I don't quite know what that means, but I do hope to look forward. I hope that I will find out more about that in the future. So in that moment, Yrberg did help us to be able to locate a ship on which we finally had some peace and quiet. We were able to rest, but I mean, what rest could there be in the midst of all of this? My mind was swimming. Too many thoughts, too much darkness. But all I could think of was to just shut up, to just stop thinking. And in the same way, all of the members of the party had some sort of similar decompressing of all that had gone on, and the chaos still screaming in their heads, but we all somehow found a way to fall asleep. And now we're off on another adventure, a time lapse of about a year, as far as I'm aware. But Ilyad doesn't know that. With that wraps up our recap. Good evening.
What? I'm up. I'm okay.
A year later.
Okay.
A year later.
How dare you?
What I miss?
Not much. Wow, yay!
Okay.
Good job, David.